Alrighty, it is noon and we are recording. Hello and welcome back to Welty at Home, the slow reading virtual book club that alternates works by Eudora Welty with works by authors connected to Welty. Today, we continue our series exploring the correspondence of Eudora Welty and Ross Macdonald in Meanwhile They Are Letters, edited by Suzanne Mars and Tom Nolan. During this series, we will continue to read and discuss a chapter each week and conclude our discussion on Monday, April 13th. My name is Anna Traylor. I am the Special Projects Coordinator at Eudora Welty House and Garden, and we are grateful to Suzanne Mars, Eudora Welty's friend and biographer and Professor Emerita of Millsaps College, for guiding these discussions. First, some quick housekeeping. To comment or ask a question, click the reactions button at the bottom of your screen and select raise hand. If you're on a tablet, you may have to tap the screen for this option to appear. And a lively discussion often takes place in the chat as well, so be sure to glance over at that chat box every now and again. I also collect the weekly chat transcripts to send in the newsletter at the end of our series, but if you would like access to this working document for reference, please reach out to me at info@eudoraweltyhouse.com. You might also find that you need to update your sharing permissions. So if you are struggling to access that document, just let me know and I'll reshare it with you. And with that, Suzanne, would you like to take it away with today's discussion?
I'll start us off. I want to give just a little background information and ask Tom to do so as well, and then we'll discuss this chapter. One, Eudora is traveling all the time during this chapter, and she did feel some financial pressures, and that's one reason that she did so much travel. But also, I think it's important to know that she took great pleasure in the places that she went. When she went to Cornell, the novelist Professor James McConkey was her host and invited her to talk about Chekhov. She loved rereading Chekhov. She really liked McConkey. She would go back twice more to Cornell for 1 week fellowships at Cornell. She went often to Bryn Mawr. Lawrence Stapleton at Bryn Mawr was a good friend, and she went there many times afterwards, had gone before. Jane Pepperdine at Agnes Scott was a friend, and she enjoyed going there. She loved, of course, continuing to go to New York to the theater, and I loved her discussion of the art shows that she had seen in New York, and she saw friends in DC as well. So there was considerable pleasure. I think also the pleasure in seeing these people compensated for, to some extent, for her inability to spend time in person with Ken. Eudora and Ken both praised Chekhov, and I wanted to call your attention to the eye of the story and Eudora's essay on Chekhov. If we have time at the end, I might talk a little more about that essay, but it's a really fine essay on reading Chekhov and why they both admired him so much. She does mention Henry Green and that Ralph Zipper has gotten her a copy of Henry Green's novel Blindness at a reduced rate. She met Henry Green in 1950 in London. They were crazy about each other. They spent all their time at an evening cocktail party talking, and then he took on a pub crawl the next day. And then in 1961, she would publish an essay about Henry Green's fiction in the Texas Quarterly. Reynolds' essay on Jimmy Carter's in Plains appeared on January 3, 1977 in Time magazine. If anyone wants to look at that essay, it's available online. And now to more substantial matters, I'm going to ask Tom if he'll tell us a little bit about Ken's memory, his depression, those issues that were going on in 1977.
Yes, well, as we've noted briefly, there were warning signals or early signs of his dementia, noticeable in his correspondence and in person too, I believe. Here things are beginning to get more severe. He's aware of it and seeks help. a psychiatrist that he'd known for a long time, Dick Lambert, local fellow, counseled him. They had regular sessions, and he advised Ken to keep a dream book and various things to help him to prompt uh, visions from the past. And I think it's interesting or notable that there's such a contrast between his letters to Miss Welty and the enthusiasm and appreciation he shows early in the chapter, especially, um, and then these encroaching, worrisome things. But he did feel, I think it's in this chapter, that he was getting things under control, and he got his creative urges back in exploring his past. He started writing about his childhood when he was 11, 12 or something like that. 1929, Winnipeg, he mentions he's exploring this territory. And in fact, I found some things in his notebooks, his late notebooks, that led to the creation of this, eventual creation of this Winnipeg 1929. It's a little pamphlet that was able to be made from some fragment that I found. It's a little vignette, kind of a short story. It's fictional. It has a fictional boy's name, but it's basically Ken going to this boys' school that his aunt paid for and had him travel and live with her for a year or two. And the fellow that she was involved with, who was sort of a disreputable type. Anyway, this we were able to print this with the estate's permission, of course, in this pamphlet, which was inserted in the hardcover version of this book, Strangers in Town, collected 3 collected novellas, also from his archive. Crippen and Landry was a publisher. So Ken felt he was getting better, and they had various reasons. He still wasn't diagnosed, properly, but the doctor encouraged him to do these different things and get out, see people more. So it was a kind of a situation where he was savoring what he had and looking forward to the future. And his wife was having a lot of medical difficulties too.
Tom, I thought it was interesting that in the chapter, he never mentions the sort of antagonism he was feeling toward Maggie. Maybe that's not even resentment. He talks about trying to help her. He talks about her getting better, but in the journals that he kept for Dick Lambert, he does talk about dreams of her, frightening dreams of her.
Well, there is a horrible dream, yeah, that he recounted. But when you think about it, you could dream all sorts of things if you had dementia and your brain is foraging around and trying to find connections, and especially in dreams, I mean, while your subconscious is asleep, as it were, or waking. So yes, but it was a horrible thing to read. She's throwing insects at his eyes. But on the other hand, there is an illness involved, and I believe these expressions of gratitude and anxiety for her medical problems and so on, gratitude at their somewhat relieving aspects. I mean, they're being dealt with. That all seems very genuine to me, But when people went to see them, it was difficult sometimes, Sure, her behavior was more problematic,
All right. Well, anything else you wanted to add, or we'll go to our discussion?
Well, I love some of these things,
Harriet, you have a question?
Yeah, I was just wanted to get Tom to talk a little bit about the the Ross Macdonald archives. That is I really um, I'm captivated by his plan for the autobiography that would move in and out of fiction and dreams and and source the original events that are connected. Um, how much of that actually was produced and does it exist in archives? And I'm assuming that's where you got the
Mhm.
notebooks
Mhm.
that you're talking about.
Yes. Well, not much of it exists. He made some. Actually, the little pamphlet I held up is the most cohesive and actually the most lengthy thing. But uh, he worked in and around little areas of his boyhood. But the grand scheme that he described once or twice, nothing like that, materialized. Also, at one point, he was working on uh, a different sort of Lou Archer book about Lou Archer's daughter, but I think that turned more into Sleeping Beauty. That was earlier, but he was always trying. And then when he talks about mixing fact and fiction, and some of the things that you mentioned, I think that was a creative response to the problems that he was having. And dreams. Maybe he could cobble together this interesting uh, manuscript, but there's not too much like that. No. Oh, but everything is at the archive in UC Irvine, and there's lots and lots of notebooks and all kinds of things there.
Maybe we'll send some of you out there to do some more work.
Good idea.
All right, let's talk about this chapter, and I'd like to start wherever you would like to start. So does anyone have a topic they would like to bring up first? If
Could I
not,
just could I just read a couple things?
sure.
I'll be brief. I
Okay.
just love that. I love this letter, January 7th. Sometimes your thought, sometimes your insight is so dazzling that I have to shut my eyes. But you must not feel that it has ever hurt me to be touched by it. The fact is, I'm skipping, if I may say so, the power of your empathy is so great that it fills me with glee on behalf of the whole human race. I just, uh, I just think that's terrific, and pretty spot on as far as I'm concerned. And then later he says he ends a I can't find it right now, but he ends the letter by saying, how much we have to be grateful for. Isn't it wonderful that he's talking about writing and Chekhov and so on, but how much many great things there are for us to enjoy. So he was an upbeat person as best as he could be.
Well, that's kind of where I thought we might go. So maybe other people would like to talk about that. The relationship of Eudora and Ken as it is developing here, and especially his appreciation for her as expressed in the chapter. Did anyone else want to talk about that? Uh, Joe Ellen. We can't hear you, Joe Ellen.
So sorry. I just wanted to note that despite the beautiful passages that Tom just read, I thought of most of the whole first half of the letters this year as rather perfunctory, a little pedestrian, talking about Santa Barbara and the conference about which we hear not much. But then suddenly, boom, the last part is just amazing. And even on page 350, I caught a reference that just really sounded to me like the flying lovers of Vitebsk, like Chagall. I share your feelings for both vertical and horizontal men, the loved dead, soar forever like birds, or the shadows of birds in a world of memory, which keeps them alive in thought, sometimes more clearly visible than when they were alive, and not really lost. And that becomes a kind of theme of his, talking about being together, even in death and love lasting. But anyway, there's so much more to talk about in that ending. But I was really smacked.
I love that passage too. And I also wanted to link that to what Eudora says about memory at the end of The Optimist's Daughter. The memory can be hurt time and again, but in that may lie its final mercy. For while it lives, we can, I forget how it goes, and we can give it up its due. And I think it's also in response to the passage about the death of Frank Lyle where Eudora has talked about Frank's death and on 348, I think. Yeah, on 348. So she says,
Do you
out
have
of
a date for that letter?
yeah, I do.
Mhm.
I'm sorry. It's August 6, 1977. August 6, 1977, the last part of the letter. Out of that inner circle of closest friends, you never met him, Frank Lyle. He taught English at the University of Texas and was here only for Christmas and summer vacations. We went to Columbia Graduate School in the same year, which was 1930-31. I typed his thesis for him. That was in 1935 at Princeton. So she was typing his thesis for him in 35. On John Galt. Do you know that Scottish writer? Our little group that's still friends here went through the Depression together here. You know that's binding. I guess I was his closest friend here. He came home from a European trip and something got the matter with his heart on the flight home, but he made it home. I know I'm at an age when the loss of friends is not considered surprising, and I have lost my three dearest in Jackson. I was counting Dermot, though he wasn't exactly of Jackson. But I am not going to learn to accept it for being not surprising. I'm going to hate it and protest it straight ahead. I'm indignant for their sakes. Up to my last breath, I testify to their absence. I testify to their absence. And then Ken comes up with that beautiful passage about memory as a kind of immortality. Bill, and then Harriet, and then Jane.
I liked this year. I thought they were very tender letters, very tender expressions of things. There was one in particular, I have to go back to it now, where they're exchanging the fact that he's reading some of her early stories.
Right,
and,
he's reading The Hitchhikers, yeah.
And she comes back to it. She says, in no dutiful spirit, but simply because I wanted to see them again. That's him reading that to her. I've been rereading some of your early stories. Perhaps you've been educating me. I don't mean by intention, but by your steady presence in my mind, because I read them so much better than I used to. I thought that was really good. Then he ends that letter with, remember, I can always read your stories. And do with love, Ken. Then she says, let's see. Yeah, she says in a letter dated September 19th, she talks about Catherine Ann Porter, which I thought was great. You know, to learn how these authors think of other authors. I mean, it's just wow.
But she's talk about that too.
She comes back. Oh, good. I wanted to hear more about it. She says in that letter, I don't know if I gave the date, September 19th, you're saying you were reading some of my early stories again, made me go back and read them too, except the few I read aloud to earn my living. I never do. It almost sounds poetic. I think you are meeting me in them pretty much as I was as a young girl, though I had had little idea they were so revealing. There are so many flaws. The little one called The Wind is a fairly accurate portrait of my father, mother, brother, Edward, and me in our house in Jackson, where I was born, and of a summer and our childhood and tornado and the ardency. Is this a word? I love that from an author. I was like, I ask that all the time. Anyway, of beginning to be alive. Anyway, I'm so glad they are able to speak to you from over the years, and they should really, because when we know and care for people, it is their whole lives that are in the present of knowing. If only this unity, could be told in stories. Maybe this is what it is. I thought they were telling each other how they loved each other over their whole relationship, and in their own way of doing that without having to make it explicit. It just so many beautiful exchanges in here. So anyway, I'll let somebody else talk.
And also the whole idea that you know a person, a writer, best perhaps through the fiction. When Eudora was reviewing a book of Faulkner letters, she wrote this at the end of that review. No man ever put more of his heart and soul into the written word than did William Faulkner. If you want to know all you can about that heart and soul, the fiction where he put it is still right there. The writer offered it to us from the start, and when we didn't even want it or know how to take it and understand it, it's been there all along and is more likely to remain. Read that. So that you can't have the physical presence of the person, that fiction brings you that person perhaps more fully than anything else. Yeah. Harriet and then Jane.
Yeah, I also enjoyed these letters, and I kept thinking, whatever else is going on with Ken, he can write. He can still write, and their passages are incredibly beautiful. And because he's thinking hard about memory and the loss of memory, the relationship between loss and memory, and that triggers for Eudora another conversation about loss and memory, but also loss and reality, loss and fiction, memory. Memory and fiction. And I am struck by while Ken is talking about the fiction that he is inventing in his head, that would be moving in and out of the mind through fiction and dreams and back into solid reality, which is not solid, which is not reality. Reality is the relationship between tenses. And it's that line, reality is the relationship between tenses, that I'm thinking is the way in which we are in a present, but we're also filled with thoughts that are coming from some other time and place. Perhaps that reality is not necessarily out in the world, but what's in our head. And Eudora's response about thoughts and dreams, and where stories and novels come from, the relationship between what is in our eyes evidence and what is our mind's image. The story moving in and out of the mind through fiction and dreams and back to what they arose from, her sense and her connecting it to the exhibition of her photographs, and the discussion of in the exhibition, which she says she wouldn't have thought of, about the relationship between.
Photographs in the exhibition were linked to stories. So
that's what I was going to say. Yeah. So they're connected to the stories, and that's itself a relationship between visible evidence of the relationship between what is external and past and what is invented and fiction. But I think the
story stops a moment from running away, as she said.
Yeah.
I mean, a photograph stops a moment from running away, I should have said. Yeah.
Either one.
Yeah. Jane and then Monica.
Okay, well, I just want to throw in me too about the very beautiful language that Ken is using throughout this chapter. I like to read a book not only for, what the plot is, but I just am struck by the language, just the beauty of how his language expresses his feelings toward Eudora. And I want to mention the letter that was dated July the 10th. And he refers to her as a queen at the beginning of that letter. And his beautiful romantic language that he talks about in this chapter. He says, love and friendship are surely the best things in life, and may, it seems to me now, persist beyond life as we want them to, like the light from a star, so immeasurably distant that it can't be dated, and questions of past and future are irrelevant. And it goes on from there. But it makes me wonder, if I know he has fallen in love with her, and I wonder if he has ever sent her roses.
He didn't, he sent her something better. This letter. And this letter is thanking her for dedicating the eye of the story to him. The gift you propose to offer me is the kind of thing that might happen once in a lifetime if a man is lucky, being knighted by a queen, not with a sword, though with a human hand, and cause him every time he thinks of it to laugh with pleasure. Yeah. So that book being dedicated to him. And he says, you make me very happy. You often have. And I await your book with gratitude and anticipation. I expect I'll never have awaited a book so intensely as I shall this one. So, yeah, that's beautiful. Monica and then Harriet.
So I just briefly, I've got one comment and two questions for y'all. I really appreciate Harriet's bringing up the November 8th letter. And I want to take where she says, it's where all our stories and novels come from, this relationship between what is our eyes' evidence and what is our mind's image. I now want to take this passage and read Eye of the Story with this passage in mind and see how that connects. I have two questions. After you were talking about Ken's letter about love and friendship, when did Welty do the Norton book on friendship?
1989.
89. Okay. Because that makes me want to go relook at the introduction to that and see what she says about friendship.
It's either 89 or 90, Monica. I might have.
Okay, but so 15 years,
Yeah.
13 years later. And then I had a question after the Santa Barbara conference. It's my page 341. It's the June 27th letter. Ken writes to her, though you may have felt outnumbered by the kinds of writer you would hate to be, you outnumbered them. What does that mean? What is he talking about?
I probably should let Tom answer that, but I think he's talking about people who are more concerned with how much money you can make from fiction, how do you get an agent,
Okay.
contract,
All those business questions.
all of those.
I was just going to say, she was working on that friendship book when I met her in Jackson in 1990, I think it was. And I think that man there was a scholar who was working on it with her.
Ron Sharp.
Okay, he was either there then or had just left. But she described how they got together. They had a meeting room in one of the hotels, and so they had the whole room, and they had all these books and books of letters and source things spread out, on a huge table, and went through and enjoyed so much what they were doing.
Yeah, they really liked each other a lot. They were good. They had become good friends, and they did rent out the room in the hotel, and they did that together. And the book was published. I have it here now in front of me, 1991. So I've got it right on my third try. Yeah, 1991. Thanks. Monica, go ahead.
I'm sorry. As far as her outnumbering all the other inferior writers, let's say, or less high-minded writers, I think he just means that her presence became so important and enormous, and her influence and readership and so on, that she just dwarfs that other contingent comparison.
But she does decide the next year. She and Ken talked about this evidently, and they both, and she decided not to come back in
Mm.
78. Yeah. Okay. Have I left someone? Monica, did we
Yeah,
address your?
that's helpful. Thank you. And I loved hearing about them putting that book together. I haven't heard about that. Thank you.
All right, Joe Ellen.
Um, a couple of quotes from Ken seems almost to summarize some of the themes that are going throughout and the concerns throughout this year. He talks about different orders of reality. I can't remember where that is exactly. But he also, when he's talking about Welty's hitchhikers, and that's toward the top, I think, of page 354, he says specifically that that story, he's rereading Welty and reading her better, but it reached out of its own time into the here and now and then beyond.
Mm.
The here and now can no longer maybe anchor for him, but
Mm.
he goes toward the beyond very frequently. He talks about that. I think someone read this, his mixed approaches to reality, external psychological realism, and then working through that until you're dreaming out of it again. But there are circular images in this section also that we've noted before in their writing to each other. And yes, it's just beautiful.
Thank you.
I have one other passage while we were talking about Ken's eloquence here, and that is in the letter of November 28th, 1977, at the very end. I was struck by your statement that these last weeks have taken quite a lot out of you. It certainly does suggest that you should spend some time pleasing yourself alone. That is what I wish for you. And I think your concern for me has been a drain on you. I'm sorry. I wish to be a source of strength to you. Certainly you can stop being concerned about me. Don't stop thinking about me, though. I live in the consciousness of your thought, as all your blessed friends do. But my spirit is breathing again under its own power, and the life support facilities can be removed. Partly on account of you, I never saw any reason to be afraid and was not. I only hope I didn't use too much of your strength. Ever with love and gratitude. Yeah.
Gee whiz.
So that sense, and at one point he says, I think of you more than I think of any other absent person. Yeah. So the way that she had sustained him, but he's worried that in sustaining him, he's drained her. And she says, I do want to tell you, you mustn't think the tiredness I was feeling has anything to do with my concern for you. Thinking of you adds to my capabilities instead of taking them away. Of course, I ache to help somehow, but what I believe is that we are needed to understand more. But as we are needed to understand more, we do understand more in our friends, or we try and hope and continue. And you are a source of strength to me. So, yeah, that exchange. All right, Monica.
So, Tom, how do these, how wide of a correspondence did he have? How do these letters compare to his other, did he have a lot of people that he wrote letters to? I'm really curious because, as we're noting, these are so gorgeously written. How did he write to other people?
He had lots of correspondence. There's nothing like this one, in the character and the intimacy and the eloquence even. But every little thing he wrote was, perfectly expressed for its purpose, and even just a couple of sentences. He would, even one sentence, he would find a way to put poetry into it, or a little dazzling thing. And I love his letters to, well, for instance, there was a man named Stephen Carter, I think, who was an academic who was writing a thesis about him. And he wrote things about writing and that had a lot of, you might say, technical things, but they were poetic and just kind of dazzling like that. He could express things in unique ways, and I'm not doing a very good job. But if I had something to quote, I could quote it for you. But he wrote about writing in ways that were make you gasp with their accuracy and beauty. Both these people were so brilliant and harnessed that in just these spectacular ways. I'm so glad that they knew each other and they got to, write these letters and be with each other and express these things and feel these things.
Yeah, in her review of the Virginia Woolf letters, she begins by quoting Woolf on letters, and just read that line. And then she says that in Jacob's room, Woolf writes, life would split asunder without letters. Life would split asunder without letters. And that seems to me what she and Ken feel. Life would split asunder without those letters. And Tom, I vividly remember when you came up to me at the Virginia Festival of the Book, I think in 2006, and you said, these are really great letters that you've been quoting in the biography. Do you think we can do a book of them? And thank goodness you did. Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, Ellen, and then Jane.
I want to take us back to Chekhov for a minute, because I think that exchange also encapsulates some of what's happening here. In fact, right in that section, Ken uses I think it's a new term of endearment between them. He calls her dear.
And she him.
Yes, she responds sometime later, dear Ken, toward the end of a letter. And this is in the same era, part of the year as the dedication, but joy comes up. And it seems like Ken knows enough about what's going on that he's grabbing for things to some extent. And some of the exchanges with Welty depend on his entire trust of her. Even like early on when she says she's writing about Chekhov, and on page 329, he says, no one has written as well, not even you, in the full white heat of your powers.
Yes.
And then later, after they've said more, when he praises her piece as showing Chekhov's moral landscape in the light of your own, he again says, nobody like him, is there, or ever will be. But sometimes you come close. I mean, he knew that she wouldn't be offended by that, and then that section ends with that he commends Welty saying, you live out of a persistent joy. And we can learn that from Chekhov too. That it's the kind of shared love and joy in this writer. And I have to also toss in that he notes Chekhov's excellence never silences another writer, even when it puts him in the shade.
I love that too.
Yeah.
The essay on Chekhov is really great. She says, Chekhov's perception of our differing views of reality, with its capacity to understand them all, may have done more than anything else to bring about his revolutionizing of the short story. Surely it lay behind the fact that formal patterns imposed on the story by long tradition gave way to a treatment entirely different, something open to human meaning and answerable to that meaning in all its variety. Yeah.
And I'll bet Ken caught that.
Yeah,
Section,
I
the
think
differing
I think he
levels.
sensed it too. Yeah.
Differing levels of reality.
She also talks about this with William Maxwell, and William Maxwell loves Chekhov. So this great writers who are generous in their assessment of other great writers. Yeah. I think we have Jane, Harriet, and Bill. So Jane.
Okay, I don't recall reading Chekhov, so I can't can't attest to that. I have very little experience, but I do want to go back to something Bill said about his style of writing, Ken's style of writing that just makes you gasp with the beauty and the eloquence of what he is writing. I had not read any of Ken Miller's writings before doing this book club. And over the break, I took an opportunity to read Underground Man and Blue Hammer. And those are detective stories, which by nature, they have to be somewhat prosaic in their writing, and you don't get a true sense of Ken's ability and eloquence of language as you do with reading these letters to Eudora and maybe perhaps other people. But the way that he can capture the beauty and essence of the world in his very precise descriptions of his of feelings and of just impressions of the world around him, I find absolutely amazing. And I find his words absolutely a joy to read. That's all I wanted to say.
The detective story can be formulaic, but I think he goes beyond the formulaic, and he also says that Dostoevsky was perhaps the greatest writer of detective fiction. So, Tom.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you for those words, and you're absolutely right. And these letters to Miss Welty are so. He writes up to the occasion. They created this occasion, let's say, for each other to heighten the bar of their and show their abilities in ways that, at least for him, that I don't think exist in other letters that he wrote, and not in the books, although they're spectacular in slightly different ways. Somebody I spoke with, another writer, his name I won't be able to, Brad Dara. He wrote a piece for People about Ken and Maggie too, slightly, but about Ken. He thought that Ken was a writer he said he seemed like one of those tomatoes that are raised in a rectangular box, and the box sort of shapes you in a certain way. But he thought Ken's potential and Ken's reality was so much larger than what got expressed in the novels, as wonderful as they are.
Harriet, and then Bill.
Yeah, responding to Jane, I just want to put Chekhov on our list of writers that we should consider reading in the future. To take his short stories and read them. But this was also like a moment where I could come back to ask you, Tom, the question that I suggested last time, which was, which of Ross Macdonald's books are your favorites and why? While we're thinking about what Macdonald we want to read.
Oh, thank you for asking. Well, I'm very fond of The Chill. Many people think that's his most perfect book. He liked it a lot. Sleeping Beauty is a personal favorite because it has so much to do with his daughter who died recently. And it seems to me, well, I won't say that sentence because that would give something away. But he found a way to express this life event, I think, in a very interesting way, a spectacular, creative way. Well, The Underground Man, which Miss Welty reviewed so appreciatively and effectively and influentially, that's a great one. Zebra Striped Hearse is really a good book. There are a lot of them from 59, let's say, or 60 on. The Blue Hammer is something of an exception. because it's his last book and he was really having some difficulties. But still, it's fine. It's a fine work. But Sleeping Beauty, The Chill, and the other ones. But even the early ones, The Barber's Coast is a very, very interesting book about the 50s, and it's sort of his Hollywood novel in a way.
I love the title of the zebra striped hearse.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bill.
Yeah, just want to mention a couple things. This is from the letter of kin to Eudora on July 26th, and it's a postscript, which I thought was bittersweet, kind of self-deprecatory, but just I thought was very sweet. He says, "I enclose a letter which surprised me from a man I don't know, but perhaps will."
Yeah.
And I assume he's talking about himself here.
No, that letter gets mentioned later on. It's a man named, I think, Robert Dinsmore, and Eudora has read the letter and
Oh,
commented.
is that the author that?
I think that's the one that she's talking about.
Okay. Now I just thought, oh wow, he's got humor in the middle of discovering he's losing his
Maybe
memory.
I'm wrong. Yeah.
But anyway, that's how I read it. I like your reading better. Trust me. And there's so many other little things in there, where they talk about memory as being part of a relationship. That's what it's dependent on, the relationship with another person. And anybody that's ever been in a relationship with somebody who's losing their memory will realize that they're kind of losing theirs too, and that shared memory, nothing else. So yeah, it's just, there's so many things. He's such a fine writer, and so is she. So anyway, thanks for listening.
Just amazing.
Harriet. Oops, we can't hear you.
That was just a leftover hand. I hadn't put it down.
All right. Any other topics that we need to discuss here?
May I just note, since Harriet mentioned reading some Chekhov short fiction, that focusing a little more on short fiction, Catherine Ann Porter would be fabulous. That comes up in this chapter, that she's really a short fiction writer who should not have been beating herself to death trying to write Ship of Fools. And Welty worried about that, but Porter and Chekhov in particular are just great short fiction writers.
I much
But the
prefer
peculiarities of this length.
I much prefer Chekhov's fiction to his plays, to tell you the truth. I love his short stories. Now, Catherine Ann Porter, this is very interesting. Bill was asking about that here, that, Eudora reviews, and it's a great review and a very timely one for our day, The Never-Ending Wrong, about Sacco and Vanzetti and the trial of Sacco and Vanzetti. And that was in, let me see if I've got the date on that, but it's not in the eye of the story, but it was 8/11/77 in the New York Times Book Review. August 11, 1977, she published that review. And so if you would like to read it, Catherine Ann was as she says here, the young man was helping her. Catherine Ann was alternately grateful and difficult, and they had fallen out. But then by the time Eudora's review is published, the difficulty is overcome. So Catherine Ann Porter could say pretty harsh things to her friends. One time during World War II, Eudora ran into her in New York, out with inebriated and out with someone she didn't think Catherine Ann knew, and she tried to caution her about it. And Catherine Ann's response to Eudora was, "My dear, you'll never know what it means to be a beautiful woman." So she could say very hurtful things, but Eudora never lost her gratitude to Catherine Ann Porter, never let that get in the way of her affection for Catherine Ann Porter, and was loyal to her throughout her life. Yeah, Tom.
Sounds like she was a little bit like the Eve Babbitts of her time. She could say mean things, but still
Yeah.
cared about her.
Yeah, and I think all her friends did. I mean, I think she was a person who could lash out. And when the one time I know of Eudora being sort of rude to anyone who ever came to her house was when the Bible of Catherine Porter came by. Not you, Tom. You were with Catherine and Joan Givner, and Eudora essentially said, maybe it's time for you to leave. I think she just was not.
Kicked her out of her house.
She thought it was going to be a hit job, and she wasn't going to participate.
She asked me about that writer and about that book, and had I read it, and what did I think of it, and yeah, and so on. She was the very first hour, she was testing me.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So she didn't want you to do that to Ross Macdonald. Yeah, she wanted to be
or to her.
Or to her, right? Yeah, yeah. The other thing is, of course, Eudora was very grateful for it, and that passage about Catherine Ann helping her, and what it means to a writer, a young writer like Eudora Welty, to have Catherine Ann Porter become your champion, is a really a wonderful letter. So I'm with Joelle, and I think reading Catherine Ann Porter would be a great thing to do, and I think reading the short stories a great thing. In my book, it's on 355. Let me get the date of the letter where she talks about Catherine Ann.
I'm going to have to put a whiteboard up over here of all y'all's suggestions.
Is it the September 19th letter?
Yeah, the September 19th. She said, she did much for me when I was beginning and often. She wrote me a letter when my early stories appeared and said she liked them. This stunned me. When the voice from the outside world is Catherine Ann Porter's, it's more than encouragement. It's a sort of charge to do right by our craft.
Right.
She became a personal friend, of course, after that, and was always one to me. She was tempestuous in her relationships a lot of the time, and broke with many who loved her or whom she had loved, and was a difficult person, enchanting and demanding and vain as a child, but absolutely unyieldingly pure as an artist, never sparing herself. With depths of feeling she didn't, as an artist, hesitate to plumb. I mean depths as dark as night. She took them on. I don't know if you're right or not in saying that she became a novelist in spite of herself. That is, I was not able to like her novel. I thought she was sort of betrayed by her own creation. But I know I am wholly partial to her short stories. Noon Wine is her real novel to me. Do you find that as powerful and chilling as I do? Should I go back and read Ship of Fools? I thought a monster had held hold of her sometimes in that. Still, she did it. She finished it. About 30 years, it was weighing her down. She was working on it when Eudora was at Yaddo in 1940 and didn't publish it till, 1966, something like that. So that's a real tribute to Catherine Ann Porter, and an honest one, recognizing the difficulties that she posed to herself and to her friends, but so grateful for all that she had done for her and so admiring of her work. Bill, did you have something there?
Yeah, it's about the same letter. It was her when she said she was tempestuous and was a difficult person. It almost sounds like she's dead, and Catherine Ann Porter wasn't dead at the time of this letter. But I wonder if their relationship was pretty much in the past, and that's kind of why she was using the past tense here.
Well, I don't think so, but she continued to see her, and she would visit her occasionally. They didn't see each other a lot, but they were not closed off from each other. Yeah.
Oh, that's good to hear. The other thing about this letter that astonished me, I highlighted it in my Kindle version. That is, I was not able to like her novel. I got to say, I liked Ship of Fools.
Oh.
So, and I thought Catherine Ann Porter or Eudora Welty too would have been great candidates for the Nobel Prize in Literature.
Eudora Welty was nominated. I don't know if Catherine M. Porter was.
I think Catherine M. Porter was I think after Ship of Fools, but I could be wrong.
Joe Ellen?
It would have been for the body of her work then. Did you say you like Ship of Fools?
I did, yeah.
Okay. Oh, well, that's good. We'll think differently of it.
I can't imagine I'm the only one out there that
I mean,
likes
I liked it too when I read it.
Thank you.
I like the
Thank
short.
you, Suzanne.
I like the short stories better, but I liked it. Yeah.
I often have thought of Catherine N. Porter and Eudora Welty as complete opposites. But, they say opposites attract, to be trite. But just in terms of taking oneself, taking ourselves out of ourselves and looking at someone else and seeing models and opinions, I think that they were probably good for each other in certain ways. But I wanted just to circle back once more to the November 12th, 1977 letter, where Ken is talking about his mixed approaches to reality and writing autobiography. And I don't know what's going to be coming up after this, but I really am anchored in this final part of the section, but where he is writing about, he says, certainly the best thing for a writer to do with the trouble of any kind is to find a personal narrative or artistic use for it. I'd been making a few more notes along these lines, and your letter parallels and strengthens them. He then goes on in the next, he skips a paragraph, and Ken is saying, I think we all aim at telling the truth about our own lives, or at least our own experiences, aiming at leaving a kind of thumbprint mark on the material. But what about a mind print? And I just love that. And it takes me back to Welty's eyes, evidence, and mind's image, but just other ways of circling around and thinking about lives and fiction, and then dreams are coming up in here. So anyway, that's it.
And she reports a dream about him that she's had.
Yep.
And this theme of the best thing you can do with the trouble is to transform it into fiction is going to come up again. The letters, All right. Anything else?
I do want to mention some comments that have been flowing in the chat while we are finishing up here in our last words. One commenter, Liz Bender, says that what they've loved so much in reading their correspondence is what I think Tom is mentioning, that game recognizes game. Their talent and regard for each other really seem to bring out a beauty of expression that is gasp worthy throughout this book. And another commenter mentions that Eudora's photographs are so evocative and that they can well imagine how they influence their writing. I know Suzanne has done lots of talks about this recently for us here at the Welty House for our teachers, and perhaps she could share more there. But I did also want to mention that it's also now been Oscar nominated and Oscar winning, inspiring photography, as Eudora's photographs inspired the film Sinners that was set in Mississippi, a vampire horror film. And Eudora's photographs inspired the cinematographer and director of that. So lots of really cool things are happening here in the chat. And I did want to bring those to your attention.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry that I never read the chat because I'm trying to pay attention to the conversation on screen. And I should go back and read the chat because I know I'd really benefit from that. Thank you, Anna. All right. I think we're almost out of time. We have 2 minutes left. Anybody want to raise any other issues? Laura, what are from Italy? What do you want to say?
Well, thank you, one, for recording these because I've been traveling the last few weeks. I've missed the last two, so it's been so lovely to catch up. So I wanted to say thank you so much for recording them and putting them online. But also, I did notice that I loved that that Eudora read Margaret's novel. But I did make a little note that of all of the books that Ken and Eudora sent back and forth, and they seem to have sent a lot of books, I was kind of surprised that Ken didn't send Margaret's book because he gave her those like updates of where it was at, how she's writing, and And then it was sort of seemed sparked by a little bit by Eudora going to Santa Barbara. So I just made a little note that she seemed to take her a while to track it down, but I loved that she read it. And I was surprised they didn't talk about it more.
Yeah, she was very complimentary of the novel.
Yeah.
Ask for me tomorrow. So, and I'll have to go back and look, Laura, because I can't remember if you don't think he said that it had been sent to her, that the publisher was sending it.
I don't think so. No.
I'll look because I don't remember that either. Yeah. Joe Ellen.
I just wanted to thank Harriet for sharing her article that brings up the Shadow Club. And I don't know how much more that comes up in the correspondence here, but I thought of it specifically toward the end of this chapter, where Eudora Welty is talking about this whole way of writing that Ken has been mentioning, writing autobiography as commentary on the fiction and fiction as commentary on the life. She talks about the story of a search that is itself a search. And it sounds to me as though that might be applied to a Shadow Club. But anyway, I just wanted to mention that, and thank you.
And, this is one, Eudora, the Shadow Club is one way of trying to turn what hurts into fiction. What they've been talking about here. Yeah, Harriet.
Oh, I don't remember what I was going to say before, but I would say about the Shadow Club. I like that moment when she talked about like a a fish pulling out of the river. She has the story has come back to her mind, and she takes that as evidence that it's still alive, that she's still in the back of her mind working on it in this period.
Right. Oh, yeah. And it's going to last for quite a little while before it morphs into something else. Yeah.
Well, I'll let that be our last word, if that's all right, Suzanne.
That's fine. Monica has pointed out that next week is the Society for the Study of Southern Literature, SSSL, is meeting. And so we'll be sure we get a good recording for it.
Absolutely. We will miss our absent friends. So if any of you guys will be with us next week, then we'll plan on seeing you then. Otherwise, y'all have safe travels and enjoy your conference. And we'll see you in the weeks to come. Bye, everybody.
And good luck getting there through the airports.
Yeah.
Yes.
I've just come through the Atlanta airport. It was no problem for me. So maybe
I canceled my flight. Today the security lines are out the door and they're telling people to get there 5 hours early for domestic flights. So I'm just going to drive from Macon to Nashville.
It's very specific to airports. Charleston is a 5-minute wait.